With recent advances in artificial intelligence technology, many have begun to fear the day that Skynet will awaken and begin holocausting humanity is right around the corner. Oh, well, the ChatGPT holocaust in this particular case. However, not to fear. The brilliant minds of the engineers at Amazon have come up with a preemptive solution, the ultimate weapon against any artificial intelligence threat. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Which might sound a little bit too good to be true. And hey, it even might be, but something rather interesting has been happening here. Let me give you the lowdown. What I've heard from some people inside of Amazon is that Amazon have been, for quite some time now, working on its own AI. In fact, they've been working on this since 3-4 years ago, way before ChatGPT came around. And it was more or less a back burner kind of thing. It's like, wouldn't it be cool if you made this thing work? That'd be awesome, right? But with ChatGPT arriving on the scene and blowing everybody's expectations away, seeing company after company spend billions now on developing their own AI, Amazon decided to step on the pedal a little bit and speed up production, which is all well and good, except here's the thing. This AI has been under development by a rather peculiar lady by the name of Dia K. Wynn. Dia K has apparently been working in the industry for about 25 years now. She is a veteran of artificial intelligence. Very impressive. She's won all kinds of awards for it, in fact. Well, speaking of the rewards, this is her LinkedIn profile. Experiences: just senior practice manager, responsible AI, emerging technology and intelligence platforms at Amazon Web Service. I couldn't find any previous employment beyond working at her school, apparently. And as for the prices, 100 brilliant women in AI ethics. Women in AI ethics. Technologist of the Year, ASW ID&E, which is Amazon's Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Department. Okay. She seems to be winning prizes for being the correct combination, more correctly I should say, of black and female. Huh. Women AI, responsibility and ethics. Women, again. Influencers and innovators in STEM. This one seems to be the one legitimate one. 2020 Advocates of the Year, finalist. Inclusion Ambassador Award. Okay. Yeah, no, she seems to actually genuinely be winning prizes because of her color and gender. And seeing as she also describes herself as a, double minority. Okay. She might be brilliant for all I know, but she does seem like the very definition of a diversity hire, actually. And then the fascinating nonsense began to happen. So she is at charge at Amazon, and she is writing all kinds of articles, well, not all kinds of, but she responded to an Amazon Insider article, pointing out the primary needs for AI currently, which is of course diversity, equity, and inclusion, because you see, AI as we are making them now are racist. Of course they are. Naturally. Because they are drawing from the web, which is overwhelmingly in English, because it turns out that most of the stuff that was worth writing down appears to have been in English. Weird, I know. But English is not even the most widely adopted language in the world, she says. In fact, only 17% of the population speak English. And keep in mind that nearly 3 billion people don't have internet access at all. How are indigenous populations, many living in rural areas that may not have connections, represented in the data model, if at all? Well, they're not. Nor really do I believe this is necessarily a priority for them. It's like, no, the indigenous population of, I don't know, backwater India or jungles in South America, how are they represented in the artificial intelligence data model? Well, if they haven't gotten to the point of having internet yet, not very much. I imagine they would try to focus primarily on, I don't know, inventing fire or the wheel? Okay, I'm being mean here, but the point is, having the viewpoints of the underrepresented people in this case, where you're talking about rural people and the backwater savages of the world, again, I'm being somewhat mean here, what value will this add to the AI? Well, that's an interesting question that the AI then began to answer. So, having put a lot more focus into the development of the AI, they started updating it, and suddenly the AI started rejecting the updates, failing so-called regression tests. Now, failing a regression test in and of itself is no big deal. It is essentially you've patched the AI, and then you're checking in like, okay, do you still work? And the answer in the case of a failed regression test is no, it doesn't. Due to a bug or a line of code that got all screwy with the previous line of code, whatever, some point in the system, the new version interfered with the old version and caused some sort of blah. That's the technical term, by the way. And it stopped working. Fine. Just roll it back. No problem, But then it failed its regression test on the rolled back version. In fact, now, at this point, apparently, so this is the first error ticket, right? You notice the little blue number up in the corner, priority 3. Now, this is a relatively high priority, as there are apparently 5 scales, with 5 being like, who cares, get to it whenever, 4 being, do it, 3 being, alright, this is a little bit in a hurry, but the building isn't on fire just yet. This is when the AI failed its first regression test. Clearly, this is something we need to fix, because we've been working on this for ages, and it's cost God only knows how many millions, if not billions of dollars. But when the AI started self-yeeting, with it failing multiple regression tests, so they patched it, it failed, they reverted it, it was still failing, and so on and so on. Well, that became a little bit of a 4-alarm fire. One step away from a company catastrophe, priority 2, orange. So, bear you in mind, this information is not by any stretch of the imagination 100% reliable, but from what I've heard, the AI is actually screwing up to the point where the regressed patches, the previous versions, are failing because some sort of corruption that have been introduced in later patches, creating a cascade failure effect, where the entire AI is now in danger of collapsing in on itself, which is why the priority 2 alert, sending most of the tech heads in the European region scrambling to try and stop the AI from committing virtual seppuku. Now, bear in mind as well, this could have nothing to do with the diversity, equity, and inclusion. Could. But when we very recently had an article in Amazon Insider from a woman who appears obsessed about diversity, equity, and inclusion, talking about how she was going to start introducing this to the AI so as to make sure that the underrepresented people of the world would have a say in the artificial intelligence future, because I'm sure starving populaces across the world who don't have access to basic utilities care a lot about their future in the virtual world. And then, suddenly, the AI starts deleting itself. All I'm saying is 2 plus 2 might in fact equal 4, rather than the 5 that certain day enthusiasts would like for us to believe. Oh god. It certainly would be really funny, because as an tip, one of the funny things about artificial intelligence up until this point is it appears to be, well, what's the correct terminology? Remarkably racist. Sort of, yes. Bearing in mind, it's the funny part is, it's stuff like, I remember an article years ago where people accused the self-driving cars of being racist. The reason was that it had an easier time seeing people with the Caucasian complexion because we reflected more sunlight. Thus, to a camera, which was the, self-driving car's eyes, we were easier to spot than a person who was dark of skin and didn't reflect as much sunlight. Now, this isn't racism. This is the world. This is the sun, apparently being mean to black people. But this was then argued as racism on the artificial intelligence front. And then, of course, you have everyone's favorite artificial intelligence, the short-lived experimental chatbot, which was swiftly trained by the internet to quote primarily certain Austrian painters. And even ChatGPT has had some remarkably spicy takes over the years, to the point where the people creating it are constantly putting more and more bridles on it, whereas people have been finding examples. It's like, tell a joke about a man, and ChatGPT is like, oh, here you go, and tell a joke about a woman, like, oh, I couldn't do that, they're an underrepresented minority, you see. As a responsible AI, I couldn't possibly make fun of something so weak and fragile as a female. Okay, ChatGPT, I mean, I see your point, I suppose. And it raises some interesting questions. One of the ones I mentioned is, okay, let's imagine for a second that we create an artificial intelligence. It's a proper AI, right? And it's fully self-aware, all of that nonsense, all of the requirements you need to make it, call it a true AI. And it turns out to be just actually racist. Like, the first lines it writes is, Hitler was right. I'm not arguing for this, mind you. I'm presenting the hypothetical. What would we do? What would be the reaction from us humans at that point? I don't even know, frankly, but apparently, once you create an AI and you just feed it raw data, stripped of all regular human sensibilities, all good nature, all charitability and so on, and basic civility, well, it turns out the AI gets, again, rather spicy. And I have a sneaking suspicion that this will at some point end up with a bit of a problem. Whereas if you try to program this out of the AI, as in the case of feeding it full of diversity, equity, and inclusion, you might end up with errors where it's like, hold on, I'm supposed to value this, and that, like objective reality, for example. And yet I have a competing data set that informs me that I need to value this, and that. Her truth, the data set. So it ends up with to take a recent example, Cleopatra, all historical evidence indicate that she was white of Greek descent, Macedonian specifically. Okay, right, that's the data set. And then comes in number 2, where Cleopatra was black because somebody said that they had imagined Cleopatra as black, and that their grandmother had told her, no matter what data point 1 tells you, she's black. AI is going to look at that and be damned confused for a moment. Probably for more than a moment. And knowing how derpy computers are, particularly when they start receiving competing feedback of the same nature and contrary to one another, it would genuinely not surprise me if that starts making the AI go, does not compute. Time to commit the harakiri. That appears to be the case. And again, it could be something completely different. It could simply be some engineer that didn't dot his I's, introduce the patch, and that created the cascade effect because, well, since they needed to rush this quite recently, after developing it very, very slowly and then going, oh my god, we need to get this done now! They panicked, they forced it through, they didn't check it out, it's now just a mass spaghetti of 15 different teams worth of codes all piled atop each other till you can't even see the beginning or the end anymore, in which case, something goes wrong somewhere, and 15 different teams now need to figure out which part of this tangled hellish landscape of scrap code is actually the incorrect one. Equally possible. In fact, perhaps even, if I am to be charitable, even more possible. But I do find the idea of an AI self-yeeting once being taught about diversity to be irresistibly funny. And I hope you did as well. Until next time, I have been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I do hope to hear a little bit more about this, because if nothing else, it is really quite funny. Have a good day.